Just figure out how to make things happen. Put this over here. So, we're supposed to do chapter 12 today, and we will, I think. It's my game plan. But we have to finish up chapter 11. And we're on page 432 and talking about trait theories. But before we do, page 433, talking about trait theories. Yeah, let's jump over there. On page 434, I think this is so interesting. Well, maybe the first thing I should do is give you this handout I have. It's for the people online. You can just Google Cattell's 16 personality factors. And you'll have this to look at. I'll put this down here in case somebody else comes in. Guess I better get one of them. Just Google Cattell's 16 personality factors, and the list I have came from psychology.about.com. About.com psychology. And I think what's interesting about page 434 is it tells you the history of how these 18 personality traits came together for Cattell. At the top of page 434, it says, "Our language has many words that describe personality traits. Gordon Allport, along with his colleague H.S. Odbert, went through the dictionary and found about 18,000 words that made reference to personality traits. But only about 2,800 of those words were collected by Allport and Obert's list concerning the kinds of stable or enduring characteristics that most psychologists would call personality traits." That's right there in the middle of page 434. "And when synonyms and near synonyms were removed, the number of possible personality traits dropped to around 200. Then Raymond Cattell came along." That's what that handout there's for, Steve. Raymond Cattell came along and took those 200 traits and did what's called a factor analysis. Did any of you read about that when you read about methods or techniques that scientists use when they're doing investigations? They put all those words in there and then tried to see which ones kind of clustered together. And they found that these 200 traits tended to cluster into groups. So a person who's described as persevering or determined is also likely to be thought of as responsible, ordered, attentive, and stable, and probably would not be described as frivolous, neglectful, and changeable. On the basis of this factor analysis, Cattell concluded that there are 16 personality traits. So we go from 18,000 words that express personality traits to 200 words that are words that would describe a personality trait, and then Cattell boils it down to 16. And then later it says he suggested he might need to add another 7 to the list. But then from his 16, a guy named Esnick came along and reduced it down to 3. emotional, on page 434, emotional stability, introversion, extroversion, and psychoticism. And then at the bottom of the page, contemporary theorists have boiled personality traits down to 5 basic dimensions. So you have the list of 16. Well, I guess actually what you have is from page 424, Carl Jung's list. Which was constructed theoretically, to this list that was constructed using words, to the big 5 dimensions on page 435. Now, this to me is kind of interesting. Look at the list of 16 that I gave you, and then look at page 435 and look at the list of 5. And what I did is I took that table on page 435 and I tried to go down here. I said, okay, let's see if we can fit Cattell's 16 personality traits into these 5. And you see, it's got the 5 traits listed because this is a very popular scheme today for talking about personality. It's got the 5 traits listed, but then it has facets of the 5 traits. And so I thought, okay, so where is abstractness? The first one's on Cattell's list. Do you see abstractness anywhere in here? Do any of you see abstractness in any of those facets of that table of 5? Does anybody see that in there anywhere? No? So what, did we lose something? Well, can you see every time you try to boil it down to a shorter list? Like, for example, look at the big 5, they call it. Extroversion. Okay, what are all the facets? Warm, gregarious, assertive, active, positive. That's what they call an extrovert, as opposed to an introvert. You follow me? It's like, wait a minute. I'm an introvert. I mean, how do I know that? Just because I know myself, as well as I've taken some personality tests on the internet. And I'm a very positive person. Very positive. And they say that's extrovert. You follow how the more you try to simplify these personality descriptors, the more you start to lose things. It's like, oh, all girls are alike. Are all girls alike? In very few ways. Well, all guys are all guys alike? See, now girls will tend to say, yeah, we get together and talk about guys, and they all have these terrible bad habits. They're all that way. It's like, no. And you don't want people doing that to you, because we're each unique individuals, and yet we tend to get together and talk about the other half of the human race and use those generalizations. So just understand that when we're trying to get at this personality stuff, sometimes the more you try to simplify it and put labels on it, the more something gets lost in the process. And maybe that's why I like Cattell's list so much. Because it's like, okay, I look at extrovert, introvert, and then I think, boy, when you look at the facets of an extrovert, okay, like an extrovert is very warm, so what would that mean an introvert is? Not warm. Okay, I'll admit that. I'm an introvert and I'm not a very warm, caring person. Now, I care a lot, but I'm not very warm about it. but I'm very positive. So see, some of these things don't hold true all the way through. So I think I like Catel's list because am I abstract, imaginative versus practical? Oh no. See, I thought I was abstract because abstract, doesn't that sound like mathematics? And I thought, since I'm mathematical, but if his definition of abstract is imaginative versus practical, well, guess what? I am both imaginative and practical. But you can't be both because you have to be one or the other. No. So see, even his 16 kind of mixes it up a little bit. Apprehensive. Okay. Now see, he says apprehensive is worried versus confident. Now, see, confident, that's a positive word, isn't it? Worried, that's a negative word. So let's get two negative words to describe apprehensive. Some people worry a lot, and some people don't worry at all. They're just reckless. You know what I mean? No, they have a lot of faith. No, that's not faith. That's just reckless. They're careless. You see, if you want to be positive about it, one of them's very confident. Okay, so if one person is very confident, guess what I'm going to call the other person? Not a worrier, but cautious. Is there a place for being cautious? Is cautious a positive kind of word? Be careful. Be cautious. So when you look at these lists, and when you look at these personality trait things, and even when you look at the instruments that are used to measure them, when you go to the internet and do one of these things, take what you find with a grain of salt, put it in perspective, and then try to be positive in both directions. Or if you want to be negative in both directions. So, which are you? An optimist or a pessimist? Do you know which one you are? What's an optimist say when we're taking a trip? No problem. Everything's going to work out. What's a pessimist say?
Everything's going to go wrong.
Something's going to go wrong. Are you prepared for something going wrong? No, nothing's going to go wrong. Yeah, things just go wrong. That's what a pessimist. So, which one are you? Are you more optimistic or pessimistic? You don't know?
I'm a realist.
You're a realist? So, is your realism optimistic or is your realism pessimistic?
Depends on what's going on, but it's mostly pessimistic.
Yeah,
but it can go either way.
I'm more pessimistic than I am optimistic.
Okay, but now see, I have a handout for everybody here. Where is it? Because in our society, okay, isn't optimism one of those positive kind of emotive words and pessimism kind of a negative word? Well, even though I'm an optimistic person, I have a great deal of empathy for my pessimistic friends. So, I found something on the internet that is so cool. You're going to love this. What are the advantages of being a pessimist?
You're never disappointed.
There you go. And that's where, see, what I think is important is if we're not careful, we start as if we start thinking that the way I am, okay, I gravitate toward people like me, and then we tend to think that we're the better part of the human race, and the people who are different from us, they're kind of second-class citizens. And you have to get beyond that. You have to say, no, God made optimist, and God made pessimist. God made, in Catel's words, God made confident people, and then in this apprehensive one, God made confident people, and then he made careful people. Now, see, they say worried, but I'm using the word careful. And in our marriage, I'm the confident one, and my wife is the careful. I still remember one day we took a trip to Oklahoma when our girls were very small, and we got in the car, and we always pray before we leave and ask God to give us a good time and a safe trip. And I said, and just in my prayer, I said, and Lord, I probably should have bought new tires, but will you just please keep these old ones going and keep us from having a blowout on our trip down to Oklahoma and back? And we hit the road, and we're heading down the road, and my wife is sitting over there just being so silent and so quiet, and I'm thinking, is something wrong, Nina? And she said, no. I said, well, is something bothering you a little bit? She goes, was there any reason you didn't get new tires before we left on this trip? I mean, see, to her, if the tires need to be replaced, what would be a wise thing to do? Replace them before you take a trip to Oklahoma 300 miles down the road where you could have a blowout and injure your family. Well, see, I'm an optimist. Hey, if I make a 300-mile trip down the road and 300 back, I just got another 600 miles out of those old tires before I had to put new ones on. And my wife and I spend a lot of time talking about these two dimensions. And if I'm not careful, I can say, you worry too much. The Bible talks about not being anxious about things, right? And I've got a handout for that because it comes right out of the Bible. But she can say back to me, Tom, you need to be a little more responsible. That's her word. Because in her mind, I'm being an irresponsible husband and father when I have a wife and two daughters and I'm getting in the car and could have a blowout. In fact, I used to pick up hitchhikers all the time. Does that make anybody nervous? Now, I don't do it anymore, but I quit doing it because my wife said, Tom, I just think a man who has a wife and children and he's responsible for them should not risk his life like that. I said, I'm not risking my life, Nina. I'm just giving somebody who needs a ride down the road so I can witness to him. And she goes, well, if you want to just go witness to strangers, couldn't you pick a safer way to do it? I'm going, yeah, I guess I could. And probably the safer way to do it is when you buy gas. Oh, okay, now we pay at the pump, but it used to be you had to go inside the station to pay. So I would never fill up. I would buy like $5 worth of gas and then go in the station and say, hey, I've got a little booklet here that changed my life when I was 18 years old. May I leave it with you? And you can read it when you don't have any customers coming in. It'll tell you how to get to heaven and how to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. I didn't discover this till I was 18 years old, and it transformed my life. And I never had anybody turn me down. Well, why would they take the booklet? Because I'm buying gas from them. So I'm doing business with them, so they're congenial. And you can do that in all kinds of stores. People will take them, and even if they don't read it and they lay it down, somebody else might pick it up and read it later. And so I said to my wife, okay, I can do that. I can make that adjustment. But so see, I see the benefit of both sides. And part of that benefit comes from being married to a person who balances out my life because she helps me see. It's like together we become more of the whole person that God intended each of us to be. But we help each other along the way. Number 3, dominance. Cattell calls that one forceful or submissive. Now see, forceful sounds kind of negative to me. I'm thinking we're all supposed to be submissive, aren't we? Submit yourselves one to another. Children, be submissive to your parents. Young men, submit to the elders of the church. We're all supposed to be submissive to God. So what's this forceful? I probably would look for a word that says, okay, there's times to be submissive, and then there's times to be the leader. And so where do you get that? You say, well, look at the Bible. And it talks about when you're in a position of leadership, when you're an overseer, when you're shepherding the flock of God, don't do it the way the world does it. but do it with a submissive heart. And I think it's interesting when the Bible talks about a person, what Cattell calls being dominant, taking a leadership role. And maybe that's the way the world looks at leadership roles, as dominating others. But the Bible says, remember, when people are submitting to you, you're also to be submissive to God. In fact, my formula for a happy marriage is that if a man is really submissive to God, it won't be difficult for his wife to be submissive to him. If he's not submissive to God, it can make it pretty tough on a woman to practice that, wives, submit to your husbands. And it doesn't mean wives don't have leadership positions. They have all kinds of positions of leadership in terms of taking care of things and doing things in life. But here's an area where it says in the family. And I said this one time when I was talking to a couples retreat. I said, guys, do you understand how hard it is for wives to embrace the notion that we should submit to our husbands? That we should put ourselves under our husband's leadership? And they go, no, why would that bother a woman? And ladies, do you appreciate this one? I would say, because women are puzzled why God would put the dumbest one in charge. Aren't you a little puzzled by that? Why did he put the dumbest one in charge? And I'm going, I don't know. And I saw some of you smiling because it's like, I think it can bring a smile to your face. And my wife helped me understand that, because she shared her heart with how it feels to try to do that, especially if you're married to a guy who's, who's very positive and confident? No, who's reckless. How can I be submissive to this reckless man that I'm married to? And now, after all these years, as we've talked and worked through it, she goes, Tom, being married to you is an adventure. She said, it scares me from time to time, but it's an adventure. But the reason it's turned out to be a positive experience is because somewhere, somebody taught me that if you're being submissive to God, it won't be hard for her to submit to your leadership. But if you're just out doing your own thing, you can mess up the whole family. So when you look through these lists and you take these tests, think about all these dimensions. And if I take time to talk about all of this, we're not going to get to chapter 12. So we have to just stop there and look through the rest of them and try to get a handle on each of them in terms of positive words for each and negative words for each. And when I look at the big five, when I take Cattell's 16 list and I look at the big five, I'm thinking the big five over general. In other words, it's just got, when it says agreeableness, it's got trust, straightforwardness, altruism, compliance, modesty, tender-mindedness. It's got too many dimensions wrapped up in that one label. I need something that gives me a more detailed picture of what's going on. Okay. Let's turn over here to page 438. Cognitive social learning theories. Expectancies, self-efficacy, and locus of control. Are you familiar with any of those words? Do you know what those words mean? Expectancies have to do with people's preferences. What I'm expecting. When someone says, you want some fried chicken? I go, yeah, that sounds good. And I have these expectations for what fried chicken is supposed to taste like. And I taste that fried chicken and I'm going, that doesn't taste like fried chicken. That wasn't what I was expecting. And then self-efficacy. People who succeed in meeting their own internal performance standards develop attitude that Bandura calls self-efficacy. Well, let's see. If my internal performance standards are so high that I can never reach them, I'm probably not going to feel as good about myself. If I lower my standard and I can achieve the results, I'll feel better about it. And guess what? When I learned this information here, I thought, okay, one thing, Tom, is don't give yourself just one great big goal that you could make or you might miss it, but give yourself little goals along the way where you can feel good about being successful as you go through life. And begin to develop the attitude that there's a lot of things I can do. I can do this and this and this and this and this and this, and all these little things will add up to maybe something bigger someday. I mean, I like going to school. I enjoy taking a class just for the fun of taking it. I mean, I sign up for a class and I look at the syllabus. I go, okay, here's what they want you to do. You read these books, you write these summaries, you write these papers, you take this test. I can do that. And it's like, hey, you do enough of those? See, watch how my mind works. You say, I successfully passed this class. I successfully passed this class. You pass each of those classes, and after you've finished, let's see, 128 or 129 divided by 3 is 43. After you finish 43 classes, you have a bachelor's degree, and you're a college graduate. Are you ready for this? After you finish another 33 hours or 36, after you do that 12 more times, you get a master's degree. And then beyond your bachelor's and master's, if you do it another 60 times, no, not 60, another 60 hours. If you take another 20 courses, guess what you get? Any idea? You take, what did I say? 128? You take 40 courses and you get a bachelor's degree. You take 12 more courses and you get a master's degree. You take 20 more courses beyond the 12 and you get a doctor's degree. That's all there is to it. You just have these little successes along the way. Oh, and then what's the next one? Locus of control. Where did they talk about on page 439. Locus of control. People with an external locus of control do not believe they control their fate. This again is an overgeneralization. People with an internal locus of control believe they determine their own destiny. Hey, you want to do something in life? Somebody said, so what, Tom? You think if you wanted to be a medical doctor, a brain surgeon, you could be one? And I'm going, no, I probably couldn't be a brain surgeon, but I don't want to be one anyway. You follow what happens? But if I wanted to learn to do something, I said to my wife one time, when we turned our garage at our house into a family room, I said, Nina, I still want a garage. I think I'll just go build one. And she said, have you ever built a garage before? See, she's always asking me that. Have you ever done that before? And the answer is no. She goes, are you sure you could build a garage? And this was my response. Okay, I bought some books on how to build garages. I bought some plans. I actually went to the city and got a permit to build one and put a sign up right where I was going to build the garage on my property there. And I said, Nina, the city gave me a permit to build a garage. They wouldn't give me a permit if they didn't think I could do it. Is that really true? Do they make a judgment about my ability to build a garage? No, they issue the permit when they see the plan for what you're going to build and where you're going to put it, and they give you the permit, and you put the sign up and say, I have a city permit to build it. And Nina goes, oh, Tom. I said, hey, if I can't figure it out, I can call someone to come and help me finish it. But at least I can start doing it because I know the beginning's not going to be that complicated. And where it got more complicated, I thought, I'm going to have to bring in some help. And I thought, no, wait a minute. I'll go drive by a place where they're building houses. This thing about putting rafters on a house puzzled me. So I drove around and watched people at construction sites put those rafters up to see what they were doing. And because they cut a bird's mouth into a big long piece of lumber and stick it up there, and I thought, what a name to call a notch in a piece of wood. And how in the world does that little notch keep this piece of wood from falling off of there? And I didn't understand the dynamics of it, so I watched some people do it, and I said, well, if that's what everybody's doing, then that must work. And I did it, and since I was a little nervous about it, I bought some metal clips. I think they're called hurricane clips, so that if a tornado comes through, instead of tearing the roof off of my garage, it'll just pick the whole garage up because the top of it is so fastened to the rest of it. But it's just, see, I have a strong internal locus of control. And I don't know whether that's genetic or whether that's environment, but I do know that my parents taught all of us that we could be whatever we wanted to be in life. So it could be that it's a combination of the two. But every one of my brothers and sisters are the same way. So I'm thinking a lot of it has to do with environment. You know, that nature-nurture thing, it's the way we were nurtured. And were you nurtured to have a strong internal locus of control? Or were you nurtured in such a way that everything that happens is just fate, it's just luck? It's just, hey, you know, if you try to do something, you'll be disappointed. You just have to take life, it's just thrown at you, and that's all you can do about it. And if you were raised with an internal locus of control, then you'll probably be more driven or more achievement oriented. And if you're not raised with that, you'll probably tend to think that people who make good grades are just lucky, or they're just naturally smart. When in fact, a lot of people who make good grades, I mean, I've been going to school a long time, and I see them. A lot of people who make good grades, they just work hard at it. And I enjoy going to school and taking classes, but I don't really want to make enough. In other words, if I can get a degree with making a B, then why would I work harder just to make an A? Or if I can make an A minus, why would I work for an A plus? You say, well, you do the best you can do. You do up to your capacity from the ability that God's given you. Well, okay, sometimes I have some weaknesses when it comes to taking tests, so that's going to lower my score a little bit. So I'll just live with that. But it isn't like, hey, those test scores are beyond me. It's just that I don't want to work as hard for them as other people do. And can you see sometimes where it's easy to say, well, that's why other people have things that I don't, because they're just lucky. They got a break. Now, and there's no question that sometimes, have you heard that phrase, it's not what you know, but who you know? Sometimes having connections does make a big difference. So there's something to be said for the external perspective, but there's also something to be said for the internal perspective. And I think most people would say that if you don't develop any internal locus of control, you just walk around, you live life just being a victim of what other people want to do in terms of using you for their benefit. Okay. Page 441 talks about personality assessments. And on page 442 it talks about objective test. And 443 mentions the 16 personality factor questionnaire, and then the Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory. That's the kind that's given individually on an interview basis. But for your purposes, you can go to the internet. I have 3 personality tests here on these cards that I've taken. One of them was based on Cattell's list, 16 personalities. It's a free personality test. It takes about 12 minutes to take it. And it came up and said, I'm an introvert, intuitive, thinking, judging and assertive. One time it said I'm an INTP. I took it another time and it said I was an ISTJ-A. It kind of depends on which one you take on the internet, and you can take the same test every 2 or 3 years and get a little bit different score on it. Then I took a personality test based on the Big Five, and it said I was open to new experiences, very low. Conscientious, very high. Extrovert, well, they said middle, but 31 looks low to me. Agreeable, 45, they called that in the middle. Natural reactions, the feeling kind of thing, 18% on that. And I knew that anyway. Then I took another test called 41 questions. Now see, this Big Five personality test had 120 questions. And I don't even know how many questions were on the one for 16 personality tests, but it took 12 minutes to take the test. But it has a big list of questions too. This test that was built on Carl Jung's philosophy was only 41 questions. And it said I'm an introvert, I'm a very I'm a sensing person as opposed to intuitive. So that kind of sensing would be facts rather than intuition. I'm very strongly thinking more than feeling, and I'm very judgmental as opposed to perceiving. Now see, it's like, no, I'm very perceptive. Okay, no, I'm not as perceptive as I am judgmental. But see, some of them say, judging, I'm right in the middle. And this test, Carl Jung's, the philosophy that was used to put together this test, this 41 questions test, says I'm highly judgmental. So who knows, maybe I was when I took it. Maybe I should go home and take that test again. But get on the internet, just for fun, and take some of these tests and see what they say about you. It can be fun. Okay. Let's turn over to chapter 12 and see if we can get this chapter done. Because according to my schedule, we're doing chapter 12 today, and then 13, and then 14, and then next week 15, 16, and is that right? 17, and the appendix. Are there only 15 chapters? Okay. Well, we're going to finish up by the end of next week anyway, because we only have 2 weeks of class left. And chapter 12 on page 451 talks about stress and health psychology. So, and what I like about this chapter is on page 452. It has sources of stress. And I found something on the internet that I thought would interest you. For those online, just go Google 50 common signs and symptoms of stress. And what's on the back? Stress management. 50 common signs and symptoms of stress. Now, we're going to look at page 452 and talk about sources of stress. But what are some common signs or symptoms of stress? A headache. Now, I can have two kinds of headaches. I can have a headache that's caused by stress, or I can have a headache, I guess I better move this over a little bit, or I can have a headache that's caused by my sinuses being plugged up. Do any of you know the difference between a headache caused by a physical condition and a headache caused by stress? I don't either. In other words, I see a headache coming on and I'm thinking, is this from some kind of stress in my life? Or is this just because I didn't take a sinus pill today? And it's hard to sort that out. So maybe your headache is just a physical thing, and maybe it's a stress-related thing. Grinding your teeth or gritting your teeth, stuttering or stammering. See, I don't recall doing either one of those. Trembling lips or hands. But number 5, back pain, muscle spasms, or your neck. All right. Now, I can relate to that one. Let's keep going down the list. Number 6, lightheadedness, faintness, or dizziness. A ringing, a buzzing, or a popping sound in your ears. Sweating. Blushing. I don't recall blushing, but I know when I'm stressed, I start sweating. Cold or sweaty hands or feet. A dry mouth. Do any of you feel a little stress when you're asked to speak in front of a group of people and your mouth dries out? And so you open your mouth to say your first words and they don't come out right because your mouth is dry. Has that happened to anyone in this room? Okay, you want to know a solution to that? Whenever you stand up to speak, always lick your lips before you say something so the words come out right. Or, I carry water with me, or just pick up a bottle of water and take a little drink before you get started, and it kind of lubricates the vocal cords. And then once you get started, have you noticed this? You're stressed when you first start. Once you get started, you kind of get over the nervousness of it. That might be another indicator of stress, that being a little nervous about it. You get over the nervousness of it. This is so strange. Why would a guy who's been teaching as long as I have, every school year, a new semester starts, next cycle, I'm going to walk in, we're going to finish this class, and I'm going to have 2 new classes that start in 2 weeks. And I'm looking over the rosters, and I'm praying for the people in those classes, that they'll be ready for the first day of class. And I'm praying that I'll be tuned in to them when they get there. And I'm praying that I won't be too nervous. How could I be nervous after all these years of teaching? I just am. It's my personality. I'll just be a little stressed by the first day of class. That's why I'll have a little card with me that says, open class in prayer, take attendance. I write down everything I'm supposed to do so I won't overlook something and get stressed about it. Frequent colds and infections. And have any of you ever had a little herpes cold sore on your lip? It pops out, it gets real bright red, and then it gets a scab on it. And then when it gets a scab on it, if you smile, it breaks open and bleeds. Ew. Now, I've never had one. Well, then how do you know so much about them? Are you ready for this? My wife would get a cold sore, that's what we called it, a little cold sore on her mouth every time we made a trip to Oklahoma. What does that tell you that trips to Oklahoma do for my lovely wife? Going back to my roots and meeting my family was stressful to her, and so the stress would result in her immune system being adversely affected, and this little sore on the edge of her mouth would pop up. And I finally realized, I said, Nina, we're going to Oklahoma, so we better get some of that high-priced medicine. There's some real expensive medicine that we can buy, and the more she thinks about it, the week before we leave, the more that little red bump starts to pop up, and then she starts putting medicine on it, and by the time we get down there, it looks like it's almost healed up. And then after a few years, she got so used to going down there and accustomed to my family that it didn't happen anymore. But just understand it. Sometimes those happen. Goosebumps, yeah. Allergy attacks. Are all of my allergy attacks due to stress, or are some of them just due to me having allergies? Well, probably a little bit of both. Heartburn, stomach pain, or nausea. You get a knot in your stomach when you're stressed or feel a little nauseous? Excess belching or flatulence? Ugh. Bowel problems, difficulty breathing, a panic attack, chest pains. See the big list here? You go, wow, all these things are common. Now, it doesn't mean that you're stressed if you have these symptoms. It's just that stress can be reflected in these symptoms. So now that you know, you say, so that means if I'm starting to feel stressed, I'll probably have some of those symptoms. Now let's look at page 452 and talk about some sources of stress. What does the textbook say on page 452? Common everyday sources of stress. And why some individuals are more vulnerable than others. Okay, misplaced keys or glasses. I have keys in my pocket and I have glasses on my face. And I don't recall ever being stressed by misplaced keys or glasses. Anyone ever been stressed by misplaced keys or glasses? 1, 2. Just 2 of you? The rest of you have never been stressed by misplaced keys? You have? You haven't.
I always put them back in the same spot so I don't lose them.
Did you 2 people who get stressed hear that? Now watch this. Okay, for those who aren't stressed, and that's me, 7, I have a place for my glasses and a place for my keys, and when I go home and take my glasses off and take my keys out of my pocket, I know exactly where they are going to be because I put them in the same place every time. Now, guess what these 2 ladies would say about our solution, 7? Because we could solve their problem, right? They just need to start living like we do. You want to know something? For those 2 girls to pick a place where they're going to put their keys every time they take them out of their purse or pocket is stressful. To give that much thought to where I put my keys would just wear me out. Now, how do I know that? Because my wife says that. In fact, she would rather put her keys anywhere and then go find them than have a place for them. Did you have a comment?
Well, sometimes you might have them in the same place and then someone else moves them, and that's why you become stressed because you don't know where they're at.
And somebody moves them? Nobody touches my stuff at my house today. They just know you don't mess with Poppy's stuff. Where he leaves it, if they want it, they'll come and ask me, can I use your car keys? And I go, what for? And then they tell me, I say, okay, they're on the dresser. They said, I know where they are. And then I sit there. being stressed all the time they're getting stuff out of the car, and when they come back, what's the first thing I ask? Did you put my keys back on that dresser? Oh no. Well, give them to me. They're laying over here on the counter. Well, give them to me and I'll put them in my pocket, because I have two places for my keys, my pocket or on the dresser or in the ignition of the car. But you're right, somebody can mess with your stuff, and if you really get stressed by it. I had a roommate when I was in college. Can you believe this guy would do this to me? Okay, he was the one who could never find things, and I always put my stuff in the same place, and he actually took some of my stuff and hid it just to stress me out. Why would my best friend do something like that? Caring for a parent, probably not. Have any of you had to care for your grandparents or an aunt or an uncle? Nope. See, when my wife's parents moved in to live with us, it was stressful for her, but it wasn't for me. I don't know why. I just thought it was kind of cool. In fact, her dad said to me one time, he said, Tom, he said, this isn't right, you taking care of us like this. My boys ought to be taking care of me. I said, no, Dad, I'm the one that should be taking care of you. He goes, why is that? I said, because I got to marry your best daughter. I told him in farm language, I told him I got the pick of the litter, so I should be the one who takes care of you when you get old. And you know what he did? He agreed with me. He said, I did get the best one of his children. And my wife said, he never told me that. I said, nobody told me that. A chemistry exam? Hey, if you put the word exam on it, does that word exam stress you out a little bit? It does me. I get a little stressed when I hear the word exam. It doesn't matter if it's chemistry, math, English, history, any kind of exam. A driving exam? To go get my license renewed, I have to take look at that thing and take a little sign reading test? Stresses me out. I'm just saying, not a whole lot, but it's a source of stress. Humiliation. Do you get stressed when people laugh at you? When someone humiliates you? Yeah, most of us do. Quarrels. Does having a quarrel with a friend create stress in your life? Yeah. Pressure at work. I would say, for me, pressure from anywhere. Anytime someone puts pressure on me, it creates stress. Oh, will I live up to their expectations? Probably not. Conflicts. Do conflicts create stress for you? That's why I gave you a handout on how to resolve conflicts. You can minimize the stress in your life by... Have you learned some things in this class already that are probably going to help you lower stress levels in the future in your own life? Will you pass that information on to other people, or are you just going to keep it to yourself? No, you say, I'll tell them, if you want to learn all this powerful stuff, take general psychology. I don't know anything about negotiating child custody, property settlements, or divorce decrees, but I know about weddings. Having 2 daughters and they're both married. Whew, that's stressful. Being promoted. Have any of you done such a good job at work that your supervisor came up and said, you know, you're such a good worker, we're going to promote you? Was that stressful?
It wasn't stressful until everyone else quit.
And then it's like, ah! I mean, for me personally, if someone gives me a promotion, it says they're expecting me to do as good a job in this new role as I did in the old one. Maybe I will and maybe I won't. It can be a little stressful. Page 453, just changing things can be stressful. When we made the change, how many of you have taken classes here that go all semester? When they made the change for some of our classes to just go for 8 weeks, is that a little stressful? When we first made the change, it was stressful for me to change over from 16 weeks, or from 16 weeks to 8 weeks, from 4 months to 2 months, That was a little stressful when we first did it. Once I made the change and got used to it, I thought, I kind of like this system. Because if all of the classes lasted all semester, I would have to have more preparations every day. You follow my thinking? And this way you focus on general psychology. Like, I'll focus on general psychology now, and then when this class ends, then I'll focus on human growth and development. So I can give that one class my undivided attention instead of having to divide my attention among both classes and teach them both at the same time, and maybe get a little confused as to what did I say in which class, because they're similar. So now I embrace the change and like it. Having a death in the family. Have any of you had a relative die? All of you have had that? Did you feel the stress? Were you aware of the stress in your life when that happened? This is interesting. Some of these stressors, you can sense it just like that. Others, you won't sense the stress, but when my mom called me, when my dad was in his, what would it have been, when he was in his late 50s, he had a heart attack. And my mom called, and I still remember, she said, Tommy, your dad had a heart attack. And I said, is he in the hospital? She said, no, he died on the way to the hospital. And I said, oh no. I said, are you doing okay, Mom? She goes, well, as good as can be expected. And I said, what can I do to help? And I was so focused on reaching out to help her, I didn't even realize that my father's death was stressing me out. And so then I went to Oklahoma for the funeral and stayed around a few days to try to help her take care of some things that stressed her out, like getting rid of some of his stuff. And while I'm getting rid of some of his stuff, I'm throwing some things away, and I'm thinking, get this out of here. And I thought, what are you so upset about, Tom? And then I started thinking, why did my dad just up and die like that and leave my mom by herself? And I thought, what a terrible thought to have. He didn't just decide I'm going to die and leave her here. But you understand what was going on in my head? I was experiencing the stress caused by my father's death and didn't recognize it for that. And then I went back to Illinois, where I was working and living at the time, and went back to school, and it's like, what's going on here? And I thought, Nina, I don't know what's going on, but I need to go to the library and do some research. And so I did some research on what happens when your father dies. And I discovered something, that I was going to be working through the stressful results of my father dying for an entire year at least. I was taking a class at the university, at a community college, and I had to drop out of the class because I couldn't concentrate, and I was having trouble keeping up with all my responsibilities, thinking about my mom, and I thought, wow. So I was stressed, but it wasn't like I had a knot in my stomach. It wasn't that my mouth was dry. It was a different kind of stress. And as a result of that, when quite a few years later, when an older friend of mine at church, his wife passed away, and I mean, it wasn't completely unexpected because she had been kind of ill, but I went to the funeral, and I walked up to him, and I'll call him Charles, and I said, so Charles, what can I do to help? He said, I don't know, Tom. He said, I just feel lost. And I said, that's the way my mom felt too when my dad passed away. And so then I thought, hey, and you know what? Every week I'd call my mom on the phone and ask her how she was doing. And so I said, hey, why don't we get together once a week and just go do something? You come to our house to eat, or I'll take you out to dinner or something. He said, that would be a great idea. And as a result of my father passing away, and then of me reading books, I discovered that if you have a friend who has a close family friend who dies, the best thing you can do is just to say, I would like to do something with you about once a week for the next 6 months to a year. And every time I've done that with one of my dear friends who has lost a spouse, usually at the end of the year, something seems to happen that they're not really, they don't have time to get together anymore. They got so many other things going on in their life. They're spending time with their grandkids. They're doing this, doing that, doing something else. And so it's just like, but for that year, I helped them work through that stressful time in life. So if you know someone this happens to, just realize that it takes it doesn't take the whole year out of your life where you can't do anything, but it's very stressful for at least a year. And then just recognize it's going to create stress in my life for probably a year. Retirement, I don't know how that could be stressful, but being laid off from work definitely would be stressful. Pregnancy, I don't know anything about that either. But do any of you have any pregnant friends who are stressed? Okay, what's one of the stresses? Do you know any having friends who are pregnant? Okay, what do you think is one of the things that stresses out a pregnant woman? Just think about pregnant women you've seen, and what do you think stresses her out? She's walking around with what? This huge, big stomach, right? There goes her, what do you ladies call it? There goes her girlish figure. Have any of you ever noticed how pregnant women's faces kind of glow? Okay. Whenever one of our friends is pregnant and she goes, I just feel so ugly, I'm going, well, I don't know what you see when you look in the mirror. And what they see is that big protruding stomach. But I said, what I see is it seems like a mother who's bringing a new child into the world has this angelic glow about her face that just makes her look so beautiful. And then most of our pregnant friends would smile when I would say this, say, oh yeah, Tom, sure. But it's like it gives them something to hold on to that takes away some of the stress. Finals week, we don't have finals week, do we? Or do you have finals week? You just have finals in your exams. You know how I did away with the stress of finals week? Don't give cumulative finals. Just give a final exam over the last stuff we've studied. Don't take an exam over the whole semester. It's too stressful. Writing a major term paper, is that stressful for you, writing a term paper? Well, can I give you some clues on writing term papers that will de-stress you? Don't decide what you're going to write on till you go to the library and do some research. And then look for a topic that has tons of sources. And then you will never be at a loss for stuff to quote. In other words, don't pick something and then try to find information. Go find some information and say, wow, there's a lot of information about this. It would be easy to write a paper on this topic. And then start collecting some information and then use the information you've collected to put together your outline. See, that's backwards what I was taught in school about how to write a paper. It's like figure out what you're going to write on, develop your outline, and then find your sources. It's way too much work, way too stressful. Just go to the library and start looking around at something that interests you and collect a bunch of information and then start using all that stuff to put together a paper. Okay. Talking in front of a class, we've already talked about that. Roommate difficulties. Did all of you grow up with siblings? Does that help? It helps a little bit with roommate difficulties. I mean, I had 2 brothers and all 3 of us shared a room. Had bunk beds in there, and it's like, okay, but that's not the same as sharing a room with your wife. Okay, if our bedroom has 2 closets in it, wouldn't you think that one closet would be hers and the other closet mine? Would you think that? Why are you shaking your head no, Dane?
Because girls normally have more clothes.
Well, that's not my problem. Tom, listen to my wife's words. Tom, she says. Nina goes, Tom, don't say your closet and my closet. They're our closets. I said, Nina, when you say our closets, your clothes show up in everything, and I have to put my clothes in a drawer. I thought, I'll build her a big walk-in closet. That'll solve this problem. She fills up the walk-in closet. I mean, we go to thrift stores, okay? So she finds stuff for 50 cents. She fills up the walk-in closet. She fills up her closet. She fills up my closet. She fills up the coat closet with clothes that I don't think she's ever going to wear. When we die, we laugh about it. When we die, our children are going to take all the stuff we bought from the thrift store and haul it back to the thrift store. Well, they'll probably take some of it. But when you buy something for 50 cents, I mean, I will confess to you, I have way too many shirts in my closet. This might be the first time I've worn this shirt during the whole cycle, because I have that many shirts in my closet. And I finally said, Nina, this is crazy. I should not have that many clothes in my closet. But when I found them for 50 cents at the thrift store and it looks good, why not get it and put it in the closet? Just get rid of some of that stuff. Be a minimalist. Okay, so how do you work with it? You learn to laugh about it and just say, hey, that's just life. Starting a new semester, every new semester makes me a little stressed. Not knowing people, that's really part of it. The more I get to know you, in fact, that's how do I get to know people before class starts to minimize the stress? I pray for the people before they come to class, because once I see your name and I start praying for you, it somehow minimizes the stress of when we meet. I kind of feel like I know you a little bit. Broken zippers. Have you ever had a broken zipper on a coat? It is stressful, isn't it? Arguments with a friend? Yeah. Arguments are always stressful. Being forced to speed up. Do you ever have some guy on the bumper of your car thinking if I don't drive faster, he's going to run over me? That's stressful. Compelled to meet a higher standard. Someone adding one more thing to my workload. That's stressful. Downsizing. Okay, Tom, let's downsize. Let's go home and get rid of half of your shirts. You don't need that many shirts in your closet. Oh, that's so stressful thinking about that. Trying to live up to social and cultural norms. That's on page 455. Has this book identified a lot of stressors in our lives? Family and friend expectations. My mother called one time. She goes, Tommy, your older brother is having his 50th birthday. Are you coming down for his birthday party? I said, when is it, Mom? And she told me, and I said, oh, man. I said, I got a lot of stuff going on the next day. It was on a Friday night. And she said, Well, everybody else is going to be here. You'll be the only one who doesn't show up for his 50th birthday party. And since my dad was gone, I said, okay, Mom, I'll be there. And just saying, okay, Mom, I'll be there was stressful. And then since my older brother doesn't like me very much because I'm a Christian, finding a present for him was stressful too. Oh no, I got rid of that stress. See, finding a present for my brother who had, if he had wanted something, he went out and bought it. I thought, how do you find a present he likes? I said, don't worry about it. Just buy something that'll make you laugh. So what I did is I actually went shopping. And here's what okay, he has a sweet tooth. He likes candy bars. So here's what I thought. Are there 50 different kinds of candy bars out there? Now see, I would have said no. There aren't that many kinds of candy bars. I went to stores and started shopping and bought one of every kind of candy bar I could find and had more than 50. So I had a box with 50 candy bars in it and no two were alike. And I wrapped it up and took it to Oklahoma, and he just thought that was so cool. It was so hard for him to admit that I had probably given him the best present of his birthday when I was his Christian brother, that he didn't care for my Christianity. But just living up to my mom's expectations was stressful. And then my brother, as soon as I get to his house, he said, well, you're welcome to be here for my birthday because Mom said she invited you. But he said, I don't want you talking about religion. And I'd say, okay, I won't. And then he would bring it up later. But he didn't want me to bring it up. Competitive forces. Do you compete with anybody in life? Or do you compete with yourself? Or do you even compete at all? Are you a competitor? How many of you like to play volleyball? One? No. Basketball? Badminton? Tennis? Okay, what do you girls like to play? Do you have any games you like to play?
Board games, card games.
Board games, card games?
Video games.
Video games?
I like to read.
Okay, now are you competitive or do you just play it for fun?
Depends on who I'm playing with. But I'm usually pretty competitive. Like, even if I'm playing with somebody that, just for fun, I usually end up being like, if they start like saying that they're gonna win and stuff, I'm like, oh, well.
Well, I'll show you a thing or two. Now it's on. Now it's on. See, I just play all these games for fun. And one year, the coach at our school asked me to play on the church basketball team. And I'm out there just playing and having a good time. And he goes, come on, Tom, push it a little bit. I'm going, I came out here to have fun, not to work at it like this. And he wanted to make work out of it. And I'm just more of a recreational kind of person and not too competitive. Airline flight delays? Does that make anybody does that stress you out? What do you do how do you cope with waiting on something? Does waiting for stuff stress you out? So what do you do to minimize stress when you're waiting? I have Sudoku puzzles everywhere in my life. So that if I have to sit in the car and wait for somebody, I pull a Sudoku puzzle out of the console and start working it. I just have these puzzles I work on. Find something. I used to have a book that I would pull out of the console and read the book while I was waiting. But now I thought, no, I'll just use these puzzles. They work for me. In other words, after you look at all these things that stress you, then find some ways to cope with the stress. Did I give you something that talks about coping with stress? Then just use what the book says. Confront the issue. Compromise if you need to. withdraw from the situation if it's that stressful. Can exercise minimize stress? How can you reduce stress? When I was in college, my friend and I, when we get stressed about stuff, we'd go out to the tennis courts and put some money in it late at night, turn the lights on, and whack a little tennis ball around. Do some of you get rid of stress by playing video games or playing card games or something? Does that help? Meditation, talking to your friends, social support. Does it help minimize stress if you can just talk to somebody about what's stressing you out and kind of get their perspective on it? Go to church, pray about it, talk to God about it. Oh, that brings up that Philippians 4, 6, and 7 thing, doesn't it? Page 471 talks about 5 ways to cope with stress at college. What does 471 say? Oh, that handout. Yeah, I get on the back of your handout, there's stress management on the back that talks about how to minimize the stress in your life, how to manage it. Plan ahead, prioritize, exercise, listen to some music, take a break, talk to other people, and meditate a little bit. And I probably would add to that, pray about it, talk to God about it. And believe it or not, adopt a healthy lifestyle. The healthier you are physically, the better your body can handle stress. Page 474 talks about extreme stress, unemployment, divorce, bereavement, a death in the family, a catastrophe. Have any of you had a house blown away by a tornado or a hurricane or anything? I haven't either, but wouldn't that be trauma? That would be extreme stress. And then post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of that has to do with people who've been either in the military or involved, living in a part of the country where a war is going on, and it really messes with them. So if you have some extreme kinds of stress, you probably need to talk to somebody about it and get some help. Okay, we'll finish this one up, and on Wednesday we'll do chapter 13 on psychological disorders.